Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Abbas Hirji, and I work at Durham College at the AI Hub, as well as the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation. I've had the pleasure of working closely with CyberX and working closely with a lot of my students who you've seen managing the networking floor as well as the registration booth. I want to thank all of you for taking the time today for the rest of the afternoon to be with us here today. For those of you who know me, you've probably known that I enjoy the stage quite a lot. This subject, however, makes me tremble on many levels. Not only because I was someone who migrated to Canada not too long after 9/11. I was a person of color, an international student, in a town that saw very few of me. And I know very well what can happen when someone cannot quite articulate themselves to your face, but do something behind the mask of the digital facades. And I know what that can translate into. So today's panel is going to be a difficult one, but one that I hope will result in a call to action. Joining me today, we have MPP Kaleed Rasheed, a good friend, a supporter, and more than anything, a mentor. I have Marilyn Crawford, Deputy Mayor of Town of Ajax, same ilk, a friend, a mentor, a colleague. We have Jasmine Daya, who I got to meet this morning, who has some very interesting perspectives on how we can tackle cyberbullying. And then we have Raine Liliefeldt from the YWCA, who will actually go into the depths of what cyberbullying can actually translate into, as well as allow us to peek into the violent iterations that may result because of cyberbullying. To begin with, I want to set some context. I think this subject needs to be understood clearly. And Jasmine, I want to begin with you. Can you take a few minutes to explain to us from a legal perspective, what is cyberbullying?
I'm going to take a very simplistic approach just to start so that everyone is on the same wavelength and understands what we mean from a legal perspective about cyberbullying. So the definition is the use of communication devices to repeatedly intimidate or harass others. Communication devices are use of text messages, internet, email, social media, any form. And I think in this crowd, you're all very well versed about technology and communication devices, so I don't need to go further on that. Bullying usually involves a power imbalance where you have an aggressor and you have a victim, a resulting victim. Within the law, we look at bullying as having sort of different subsections. So from a bullying perspective, we have verbal, social, sexual. We then have cyber. So cyber has become, in the eyes of the law, a subsection within bullying.
Thank you, Jasmine. And I want to take that conversation just a little further. And Raine, I'm looking at you because it's one thing to say that this is what cyberbullying can be defined at and this is how it's understood, but there is a very dangerous, violent undertone that accompanies cyberbullying. And I want you to shed some light on that.
Sure. So at the YWCA, we have, and with a lot of women's organizations, we use the term cyber violence or tech-facilitated violence against women to recognize the serious harms that actually are at play with this issue. Cyberbullying is absolutely correct and is well used, but when we look at things like that describe the harmful behaviors, so spreading lies, sharing intimate images without consent, when we look at the serious harms and the threats, it's beyond bullying. It's criminal, in fact, which is why we have lawyers involved and why we need to look at a multi-stakeholder response to this issue, and that it's not just about bullying, especially when we look at folks in this sector, especially women working in ICT who are experiencing harassment online, actions that are limiting careers, and so having, for us, the term, for the sector, using the term cyberbullying is just not enough, which is why we've stepped into the foray of using tech-facilitated violence. We also use in the intimate partner violence space the phrase tech-facilitated coercion and control. to recognize that it's beyond just some of those devices. It also includes things like GPS locators and a number of different things that go beyond just that bullying factor.
Thank you, Raine. MPP Kaleed, I want to turn it to you because based on the two discussions that we've just had, it's important to ask that from a provincial perspective, how are you addressing the issues that we're hearing around cyberbullying and cases that are coming to light?
Absolutely, but first of all, thank you, Ali, and CyberX for having us here for this panel discussion. Back in December of 2019, just last year, I introduced a bill which is currently in a committee. It passed second reading, which is Stop Cyberbullying Day in Ontario. And the reason I introduced that bill was because as a father of 3 daughters, I know what our children, and my oldest daughter, she's only 12, I know what our children are going through. And one of the reasons I came into politics is because this is something which is very personal to me, because I see how it is impacting our children who are our next generation. I traveled to the furthest north in Ontario, a city called Sioux Lookout, not too long ago, for the budget consultation, and it literally killed me when I heard that children as young as 13 or 12-year-old are committing suicide because they are being bullied, and literally I was just crying there, and I was like, what can we do to make that change or bring that change? And I'm really proud that our government right now, whether it's education, Minister Stephen Lecce has been out there very aggressively promoting that we need to make sure that cyberbullying is part of our curriculum to make sure that we bring that awareness. But also, just this year, we introduced a justice bill which allows individuals who have been the victim, such as if somebody has shared an intimate picture of yours, you can actually now, once this bill is passed, you can actually bring them to a civil court and actually can sue them. So we as a government are bringing those changes because this is something very near and dear to all of us, all the entire caucus at the Ontario legislature.
Yeah, thank you for that. And if we drill a little bit deeper into this, Marilyn, this is no different from your observations as well. I know we've spoken quite a bit. You do not have a tech background, but you've been a trustee of a school board and now a regional councillor as well as a deputy mayor. You've seen certain cases and you're taking certain steps, not necessarily from a legal perspective, but as a councillor. Can you shed some light on what you've been doing in light of the cases that have come before you?
Thank you, Ali. So for me, I started my political career as a school board trustee, and I'd have to tell you, over 18, almost 20 years now, you know you're not in Kansas anymore. We deal very much with different issues than we did when I was a school board trustee. And it's not, I think that we really, as a school system, no disrespect at all, but as a school system, just like EQAO became just a center thing that we would have to deal with on an individual basis, it's now become threaded through the entire curriculum. And cyberbullying, cyber awareness needs to be that same threading through the entire curriculum. Our police do a wonderful job at building relationships through cops and kids, cops and youth, but again, it's very reactive and not proactive. They need to have the resources to be able to. The thing about the relationships, though, is that they're able to gain trust with those vulnerable sectors and be able to, so that when there's issues happening, that they feel safe going to them. So for the town of Ajax, we began this last year. I think it was a series of AI series. So we would do AI with youth, AI with seniors, AI with business. We're also introducing another series called Unhackers, and it's targeted at seniors and at our children, because we believe that even though I'm not part of the education system anymore, we have a responsibility for all of our residents to be safe when they get these devices into their hands, that they know and be aware of dangerous predators out there.
Thank you, Marilyn. There are two things that I want to pick up from there. First, when you spoke about devices, and second, about this plan of action and having some way of where you can report it and certain steps that are taken. So we'll come back to that a little bit. But Jasmine, I want to go back to our chat on the phone, I think a week ago, where we felt it was important now to start talking about, yes, you've defined what cyberbullying is, but it can manifest itself through text, through email, through instant messengers, through Facebook, through webcams. Could you shed some light into how this cyberbullying is actually witnessed and maybe perhaps point to some examples?
Sure. So just by way of background, I'm a personal injury lawyer. And when you think of a personal injury lawyer, most of you are thinking car accident, trip and fall, slip and fall. Yes, I know how to do those claims, and I have those claims or clients that have had these incidents, but that's not all I do. In fact, one of the areas that I have made one of my areas of specialty within personal injury is with respect to cyberbullying. And a lot of those claims involve minors. And they are the types of claims that will make you hold back tears. I have parents come to visit me, and they're sitting across from me, and they're telling me these stories, and I have that knot in my throat. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, hold it together, because I'm a professional, and I'm trying to, do my lawyer job. But it's really hard because it touches the human element. All of us are people. We have emotion, we have feeling, and it's very hard for me to not let them see that emotion, especially because I too have 3 children. And I always think to myself, okay, what if this was one of my kids? I don't even know how I would keep it together. So I think it's important that when we're talking about cyberbullying, we're not just talking about, the schoolyard shuffle anymore. We're talking about serious consequences that have lifelong ramifications for individuals. So going to answer the question that was asked, the types of things we're witnessing are individuals who are, well, from a minor perspective, and I'll talk about adults in a minute, but I'm seeing people that are repeatedly harassed through Snapchat messages, and as you know, those Snapchat messages, they erase unless you try and save them. Through social media posts, Instagram, not so much Facebook anymore because it's kind of passé these days, but Instagram and YouTube videos even, just everything. There is so much out there, and when you see what these kids are going through, it breaks your heart because they can't escape it. It's not like that schoolyard bullying anymore, where you leave the schoolyard, you go home, you're safe. No, this follows you. And not only does it follow you now, it might be there for the rest of your life. And this takes us back to a few years ago. All of you will remember the tragic story of Amanda Todd and how she took her own life. Why? Because of the ongoing bullying and harassment that stemmed from one little incident, and it just followed her. And at the end of the day, it was too painful for her to continue. And so that's what we're seeing. And so just to finish the question, one of the things that I can say is that I've got young children as young as 9, and not my own children, I call my clients my kids, but 9 years old on suicide watch. I have 11 years old cutting herself. And this is not only impacting the children, it impacts the families. I have a mother crying saying she is on the verge of losing her home because she took time off to care for her daughter. She doesn't want her daughter to know because she doesn't want her daughter to feel that she's at fault. But she couldn't work. And what happens when you don't work? All of us need a paycheck. We all have bills to pay. She couldn't pay those bills. And now either she's got to sell her home or lose her home to the bank. So that is what we're talking about when we talk about cyberbullying, at least from the minor context.
Thank you, Jasmine. And I'll take it a step further. I was talking to, I don't think she's here today, Dr. Ruba Lomeri, who leads some of our cybersecurity work at Durham College. And she put this proposition in front of me where she said, 10 years ago, if I told you someone's following me, it had a very negative connotation. Today, you follow me, from the context of Twitter, has become such common nomenclature to us that it's just obvious to us that, yes, people follow you. But what can happen when someone follows you and takes a twist is exactly what Jasmine was just talking about. There are more examples that I'll bring to light, which are very difficult to share, so I'll exercise some caution with that. But just taking a step further from what you laid out for us, Jasmine, Raine, I'll come to you because you also brought up that it's the Amanda Todd example, absolutely, where a child's taken her life, but then there are issues also around depression, anxiety, mental health. You're seeing a lot of those cases as well. Could you shed a little bit of light on that?
Sure. So, YWCAs are in 32 communities across the country, actually over 300 communities, but we have 32 YWCAs across the country, and we have various programs where we're working directly with youth. Counselors are doing leadership programs, and so a few years ago, more and more, we were hearing from young women who were having these really heinous experiences, reporting into our program workers. They're just going in for a general program around leadership and sharing really horrific incidents of ongoing violence, harassment, and threats. And so we knew that more and more, as the YWCAs were getting together and our program workers were having conversations with one another, that this was happening more and more. And so we began to address it with a project called Project Shift, which was a multi-year, collaborator program to look at the issue of cyber violence against young women and girls. And primarily the focus was about mental health. Looking at the fact that suicide ideation is a huge thing, looking at not only the mental health impact, but also when you have in our education system, more and more, we have Google Classroom and things like that where students are actually asked to be online, and part of their homework is about being online. Well, if you are experiencing more and more attacks and your person you're feeling less confident about going into those spaces, then what else is affected but your grades, your ability to look for work, and all of those things were being impacted. So it's the mental health aspects that are certainly a big concern, but it's also the career and education limiting pieces that are really important to us as well. So part of our work was more than just bringing mental health folks together, but we also brought together educators. I worked with the ICT sector, specifically with social media platforms like Facebook, Microsoft, some game companies, because not only does this happen in spaces online, it also happens in gaming platforms. And I can absolutely share a lot of really heinous things that happen. I'm going to drop one now. Has anyone ever heard of avatar rape?
Yep.
So, sorry to just drop that. I realize I should have done a trigger warning, but yeah, these are things that are happening in spaces. And so when your person is attacked, it's more than just bullying. It's limiting your education. It's impacting your mental health and your future. So these are all pieces that are generally impacting the future of our children, our youth, and our workers, because this is happening in an employment space as well, and I think that that's also really key to address in terms of women in the ICT sector who aren't moving forward because of what they're experiencing online.
And thank you for your strength in bringing that forward. Marilyn, I know Jasmine and Raine have spoken a lot about children and young adults. You've also taken initiatives now to protect seniors online. I know with applications like Connects Health, you're running security training and awareness programming for seniors. Why was that important for you?
Well, believe it or not, I'm 58. That's considered to be an older adult these days, verging into the seniors age. And they're trying their best to become tech savvy. They really are. They get their iPhone, they can take a picture, they try to go on Facebook, they don't quite understand it, and then there's all these pop-up ads and then these suggestion things if you're not properly secured. And to be honest, seniors are as vulnerable as our children. And so really you have to look at seniors and say we need to protect them too. There are so many I get all these messages about people who won all this money and they've hacked into somebody else's account. Yeah. I know now that I can say, because of the training that we've taken, because of the understanding that I now have gained, is that I know you're not. I know that's not you. I'm going to be telling him that you've hacked his account. But all of our seniors need to be aware of that. People don't know. They trust. And there's nothing wrong with trust. And isn't it sad that we can't trust anymore? But the reality is they need to be aware that there are people out there that are trying to trick them.
Thank you, Marilyn. MPP Kaleed, from a government perspective again, what are some of the legal recourses that individuals who have experienced this can access, and how is your government taking steps to ensure that anyone who is perpetrating such kind of activities online experience the full force of the law?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier about the intimate pictures, and now once this whole bill is passed, individuals can bring someone to a civil court system. But also, I want to talk about, and as two of the panelists over here talked about the mental health issue.
Yeah.
And I have personally met some of my constituents who have come forward and have expressed, and I've seen it myself, the mental health issues that they are experiencing because of cyberbullying that's going on. And I'm always advocating about this, that it's not just cyberbullying, but we have to talk about the mental health issues that individuals experience. I'm from Mississauga, and part of the airport is actually, Pearson Airport is connected to my riding. And the horror stories that I've heard about human trafficking that is going through, that is happening in the cyberspace, we have to talk about these issues. I've actually personally met two individuals when I was working on my bill who were unfortunately the victims of human trafficking because of this whole cyberspace. And they are actually now working with me to make sure that we educate our youth, our children out there, to make sure that they understand when they are in this cyberspace, that what are the challenges, or also like what are they looking at the signs of such heinous criminal activities that are taking place. And we all have to play our part in making sure that we are educating our children. As a parent, I am always making sure that I'm, somewhat like monitoring my children's activities to make sure that, because me being in politics, sometimes they are the target of these activities. And I actually go to different schools in Mississauga and other areas where I talk about the cyberspace, because as I said, this is something I've taken upon myself on a personal level to make sure that our children are protected to the best of our abilities.
Yeah. Jasmine, I'll come back to you now. I mean, you've mentioned a lot of cases where parents and their kids have come to you and have shared certain scenarios that you're going through. But what are those telltale signs that something is actually happening online? Because it's not obviously visible. Now, unless you're monitoring activity, which in and of itself is a challenge, there are certain signs that tell you this is going on and could manifest itself more dangerously. What should people be looking for if they suspect someone is going through an experience where they're being bullied and harassed online?
There are telltale signs, but in keeping with how I answer your questions and not answering them really at first, there are 1 in 3 adolescents report in Canada being a victim of cyberbullying. 47% of parents in Canada state that their child has been a victim of cyberbullying. 40% of Canadian employees state that they are a victim of regular bullying or cyberbullying. These are huge statistics. So, yeah, how do we tell? Because you don't see visible signs. When you're bullied, if it's physical bullying, you're going to see maybe a bruise or a bump or a scrape, and we're not going to see that with cyberbullying. With cyberbullying, the telltale signs when it's involving minors, looking at their behavior, if there's changes in behavior, if there's changes in the way they eat, if there is more destructive behavior, if they don't want to go to school, if they have a withdrawal from social activities or social environments, you're looking at changes. And that's difficult because we were all teenagers not too long ago, and we're already going through a lot of changes. So how do you differentiate? Is this just because they're growing up, or is this because there's something more? And my advice, and what I try to do with my kids, because admittedly, I'm not there all the time. I'm working, they're in school. What I'm trying to do and what I try to tell people to do is communicate, because that's the easiest way. It's not foolproof, but it's the easiest way to monitor changes.
Yeah. Let's dissect that a little bit. I know you mentioned 1 in 3 Canadians have reported some form of cyberbullying. Raine, I'll turn it over to you. Can you dissect that, what that definition of the Canadian who's experiencing this is? It's more centered towards marginalized groups, towards women, people of color, Indigenous communities. Can you shed some light on that?
Absolutely. So, our communities, what's happening online is unfortunately mirrors what's happening in our communities. So more and more we know that marginalized folks, LGBTQ2S folks, trans folks, they experience greater discrimination and challenges in the community. So of course, that's going to be transferred into those online spaces. Especially, I talk about the misogyny and patriarchy that we experience in daily life also is transferred into those online spaces, and that there isn't this dividing line anymore between what's happening in person and what's happening online. If you ask a lot of the youth in your lives, that it's all just life, and that some of it is happening in their screens and some of it's happening in person. And in the same way that the bad actions that we're seeing on our streets, on our buses, with racism and homophobia and transphobia that's happening literally in our streets in Ontario, on our buses and in workplaces, etc., is also happening in the spaces where we have no anonymity, and where when we go to report or share information, I think one of the biggest pieces around that mental health is stigma, is that often when those folks go to report, what they're hearing is they're getting judgment, they're getting shame, they're getting blame. So for instances of, if a child has shared something that maybe they shouldn't have, there's that fear of telling the parent. So part of that is where the mental health issue comes from. If there's an incident happening at work with racism, does that person fear reprisal from their workplace? So all of those are really key factors. I think I also want to share that the little incidents, they all add up and they weigh on us. I'll share also for those of you who are, who I call trusted adults, because I assume that you all have folks in your life that are little. YWCA created a resource called Trusted Adult Guide with an organization called Media Smarts, exactly to sort of support all of those folks who are told, you're the person that children should go report to. And so our teachers, our friends, our aunts, et cetera, because they're not necessarily always going to come to their mothers or fathers or to their parents or guardians. They're going to go to someone else that they trust. So our goal was to try and equip those people who are the trusted adults with really accurate information on how to tell those signs, what those signs are, but also how to navigate going to report, seeing an issue of cyberbullying and reporting it on those platforms in the accurate way. The other piece that I'll also say is that absolutely, just to follow up with the MPP shared, was that the issue of human trafficking is really, it's heinous. And unfortunately, it doesn't all start with bad actions. It also starts with romance and excitement and with the folks that we think are our friends. So YWCA also created a resource called Is Our Relationship Healthy? Which is just a sort of really interesting pamphlet, but we use words that youth can identify with. So someone youthful might not identify with the words, is someone trafficking you? But they might make the connection that with the question, are you being asked to have sex with someone that you're not ready to, right? So using that language. So it's really a myriad of I really think that in this work, we have to stop looking at these silos and looking at the dividing lines between government and education and the ICT sector and the cybersecurity folks. These are a really huge problem. It's toxic, it's pervasive, and if we don't work together across all of those channels to solve it, then the people who are the most vulnerable in our communities are impacted, including seniors, including women, including marginalized and trans folks.
Thank you, Raine. Yep, in Durham Region, which is where Marilyn and myself work and reside, the Durham Regional Police Services during International Human Trafficking Day had initiated quite a few cyber-related initiatives. And even I know some of my friends from Ontario Tech are here. They've just launched something called Ajucate, which is again geared towards seniors. So those conversations need to be had. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to sort of take us into a final question and then wrap it up, as I know there are other speakers and panels as well. MPP Kaleed, I've got this question on Twitter twice now, where yes, we've spoken about bad actors. Yes, we've spoken about individuals who don't know enough and then go through a very difficult process. How can we hold technology also accountable and responsible to some degree to ensure that these aspects of cyberbullying are protected against in some?
So I'm going to answer this question in a very different way, because I think it all, unfortunately, maybe today you cannot hold technology because it's a huge space out there. But what we can do is that we can hold those individuals who are playing a part in these unfortunate activities, hold responsible. And as I said earlier, that now we are working towards that because we want to make sure that individuals out there feel secured and protected. Once this bill is passed, the Justice Bill, it's going to be a start. And this is not the end as well, too, because we want to go further down. And as I said, that we talked about human trafficking, and then there are so many different ways out there that individuals, I actually, for the very first time, heard a word called, and please excuse me, it's called revenge porn. And when I heard that word, and I was one of those individuals who asked, what is this, to one of my group. And when I heard about it, I was like, we need to take action right away. And that's exactly what I said to the Attorney General. I said, Minister Downey, I said, we need to look into this because it is our responsibility to make sure that our next generation is protected. And we'll continue to do our part as a provincial government.
Thank you, MPP Kaleed. I'll give you ladies 30 seconds each just to talk about one aspect. So, Marilyn, in Ajax, for example, at the Innovation Village, you're doing some work to bring in some tech-conscious companies into Ajax. How are you going about reaching out to these companies?
IceVR is one of our first tenants into the Innovation Village, and their focus not only is about cybersecurity within companies to come in and train them in that, but also we will be launching this into the school system.
Nice.
So that the schools will be able to have an opportunity to come through and be educated through a really cool, okay, I don't even know what you call these things, those, the VTech
Virtual
glasses
reality.
or whatever. That's how techie I am. But it's cool because it's like gaming,
For sure.
but they're actually learning something, and it's going to be really great to have the kids come through that at a very nominal fee, so it's affordable for everybody. And those that can't afford it, we'll figure out a way of getting them through there, because money shouldn't be ever the holdback on learning about how to keep yourself safe.
Thank you. Jasmine, one tip about staying safe online.
One.
Just one.
I got the hardest question here. One tip. Well, I'm going to make it from a legal perspective because that's all I can talk about. It's all I'm qualified to talk about. Know who's on the other side of the conversation. That's so important. I think that we assume that everyone's good out there because we're good. They're not all good. So know who's on the other side of the conversation, know who you're engaging with, and know that the legal system is not moving as fast as technological advances are. That means that if something happens online, I am telling you from a legal perspective, your options are very limited. And the damage will already have been done to you, and the legal system is going to try and catch up and may or may not help you. And I would be more than happy to share more about that another time.
Raine, a closing comment from you, please.
I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in weighing into this space for the last 5 years, through project work, through working with the tech sector, through working with youth, their parents, mental health professionals, is to remember the issue around compassion and empathy. I heard it out here earlier, and that's to recognize that we're all in the space together. It's a challenging one, and the more we recognize what the person on the other side of the report is experiencing, the more we recognize the hurt in each other and try and solve that together, the better we are as people and as communities. And so if I were to leave us off on a note, it would be around empathy and compassion.
Thank you, Raine. A mentor of mine once said, Ali, you know what, get comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. And if he was here today and still alive, he would know that I followed suit with that. It's not an easy conversation, but before I thank our panelists, I will say this. Our sponsor, Spark Center in Oshawa, which is a startup incubator, if you will, in Oshawa, is again looking at how can we bring in companies and then within these responsible, cyber-conscious kind of frameworks, help them scale their deployments. This is a conversation that is happening in Durham region because we've experienced certain cases, especially if you go back just a month from today, from a human trafficking standpoint. There was an entire series on the CWC about this. So we are taking this seriously. Hence, our friends from Invest Durham, my friends from the town of Ajax, town of Whitby, Pickering, are all here to tell you that we're here to collaborate, we're here to talk. We don't know it all, but we know what we don't know, and we would love to have those conversations. Before I thank the panel again, what I will say is there's going to be a short break for 10 minutes, and then we have 3 more panels, as well as a closing keynote from Rola Dagger, the president of CWC Canada, and I hope you won't miss that. Also a panel with Dr. Anne Kavukian, who during my formative years at a company called Orion was somebody that I studied a great deal, and her concepts around privacy by design guide my work at the AI Hub and the Center for Cybersecurity. So after the break, please stay and enjoy those remainder panels. On behalf of Durham College, on behalf of CyberX, the entire Durham region, MPP Kaleed, Marilyn, Jasmine, Raine, thank you very much. Thank you.